As I'm editing this YouTube video of the 1941 Ford GP, I realized I have some decent video of the walk around video, but I don't have a lot of good history behind the Jeep, which is probably the most interesting part of this whole video. So let's backtrack to going to World War II, especially if you don't know much about World War II Jeeps. So when the war was inevitably going to happen, the government sent contracts out to companies that they knew could build a World War II Jeep, and 3 different companies responded. There was Willys, Ford, and Bantam. And as we scroll through on the Onyx Ada website right here, you're going to see those 3 prototypes. So this first one is the Bantam BRC. Definitely a very unique looking vehicle. Unfortunately, this company just did not have the production means to keep up with war demand. And the 2 contenders were Ford with the Ford GP right here. It definitely looks like a Jeep the way the headlights and the grille are designed. And then you have the Willys MA, which is a little goofy looking with the headlights on the fenders here, but you can definitely see some pieces of the Jeep in its resemblance. So obviously, they took the best of the 3 prototypes and they came up with the inevitable World War II Jeep design, and these were manufactured by both Willys and Ford. Bantam wasn't a big enough company to build the Jeep, so they just produced trailers. Now let's look at production numbers here. So Willys built 363,000 Jeeps and Ford 280,000. Now, that was the standard production Jeep. Now, if we backtrack a little bit, these prototypes, they had to build enough for the military to actually test them, which is this beauty right here, one of my favorite looking Jeeps of all time. So if we look at production numbers for a Ford GP, we're going to find that they built just under 4,500 examples. Now if you compare that to the number that they built during the war, and you do some math calculations, this is just over 0.5% of all total World War II Jeeps. A seriously low number, and you just don't see any of these Jeeps anymore. So when I was, this summer I bought a CJ2A, which is shown right here. This is a very early CJ2A. Of course, you can tell that it has the tool slots on the side of the body, which is left over from World War II. Just a really early Jeep. Andy and his buddy Clay show up to the shop to buy this Jeep, and we loaded up on the trailer with swapping Jeep stories. Andy mentions that their buddy found an extremely rare World War II Jeep within 20 minutes of my house, sitting in a junkyard essentially. We get to talking, and this is what it was. So if we zoom in on this picture here, it looks like a piece of junk. It's sitting on its side in the dirt for who knows how many decades this thing sat out there. And Andy and Clay instantly recognized that this was an early prototype World War II Jeep. So they drove over and yanked the thing out of the junkyard. Unfortunately, it was not in that great a shape, sitting on its side for all these years. But here are some photos of them, as they pull the Jeep out of the junkyard. And there is Clay sitting right there looking at the pile that is left of the Jeep. And then here they are, putting the Jeep on the trailer. There's Clay and there's Andy. So it definitely wasn't anything to write home about, but these Jeeps are just so rare that any surviving example needs to be saved. And here's a little walk around video of the Jeep after I purchased it from them. Here it is, the Holy Grail 1941 Ford GP. We'll start on the good side, do a little bit of walk around, then get into the details of the Jeep. This thing basically sat in someone's burn pit on its passenger side for who knows how many years. Judging by the steering wheel in the Jeep, maybe since the 1970s, which would be about 50 years ago from today, and it definitely is really showing its age. I think probably what happened is this thing was in okay shape when it went in, and then once the fire just burned all the paint off of it and started heating up all the metal, the rust process just accelerated, and that's why nothing's really left of this side. Unfortunately, the body did collapse a bit on the way home. It was not this bad. You could still stand on the passenger side floor, and it felt kind of stable-ish, and the hood fit a whole lot better on the front end, but that's just what you get. I actually hauled it inside of an enclosed trailer
just to prevent parts from flying off going down the highway, which was a real concern. But this is the money shot right here, the slant forward GP grill. This side actually looks really good. This side's definitely been bent a little bit from sitting on its side, and you can really see where the entire hood's just been ate up. I've never in my life seen a Jeep this rusty. Even when you see pictures of them in the bottom of the ocean, they don't look like this. So we'll go ahead and pop the hood. The hinges still work excellent, I might add. It's got a really nice battery tray in here. The engine, however, I did not even know it was possible for cast iron to rust like this. This almost looks like a beehive nest. It's so nasty. Same thing with the manifold, and it's really sad because on the Ford GPs, there's just a lot of parts that are unique to this Jeep, and really no parts interchange with any other Jeep from World War II. So everything is very specialized for this kind of vehicle, and it makes them almost impossible to restore if you don't have all the parts, because they just don't exist. I think there's about 450 surviving Ford GPs in the United States. 450 and a half, I might add, considering this one. But yeah, getting parts is impossible, and guys that have parts, name your price and people are going to pay for it. Radiator, 4,500 bucks. Headlight buckets, 1,000 bucks. You got an original manifold, forget about it. So the GP used a Ford 9N tractor engine. However, there are a lot of little touches that are specific to the Jeep. You'll notice that this one has a downdraft carburetor. On the tractors, the manifolds are kind of flipped 180, and they use an updraft carburetor. So that's one main difference. The distributors on these were specific. They had on a tractor, the distributors kind of sat up front, really hard to get to. So on these, they had an angle drive that came out towards the side, just to keep things out of the way, easy to get to for setting timing, that kind of thing. And then it's got a special plate on front of the engine, which is right here, and that's what mounts it to the frame. And honestly, that thing looks usable, so we could transfer that onto another engine. I don't know what my plans are for the Jeep yet. We are just going to go through it in this video. Still got the power wire on the strap there. I gotta say, the charging system doesn't look like it's going to work anytime soon. I've never in my life seen something so nasty as that. At least that's freed up. But I am amazed. Look at the crankshaft clearance on this thing. I mean, no room for errors when they're engineering this. That's probably why the plate's angled up like it is to clear the differential housing. A couple more specific things to this 9N tractor engine. It's got a special camshaft that raises the horsepower. The tractors did not put out a lot of power at all. Can't remember off the top of my head, but I believe this camshaft adds about 10 or 15 horsepower. So although it's a little bit hopped up from a standard tractor, the GP will not keep up with the Willys MB or the MA with the Go Double engine, because these are like 20 horsepower less and just cannot pull the gears going down the road. So that's one interesting thing. Another thing is that on a tractor, your fuel tank sits up high and it gravity feeds into the carburetor. With a Jeep, obviously, your fuel tank's down below and it's got to push up into the carburetor. So these actually had a mechanical fuel pump on the side of them, and the camshaft was specially designed to run that fuel pump. A tractor engine does not have any of that. Moving on to the transmission, this is loosely based off the Ford Model A. Again, because there was not a lot of time to prepare these prototypes for the military, they kind of used some off-the-shelf parts. So the bellows housing looks very similar, and the transmission very similar to a Model A. However, I read online that the distance on the bellows housing is a little bit shorter, I believe. So the input shaft on the transmission is custom to the GP, as well as the main shaft that comes out into the transfer case. Now this is a Spicer Dana style transfer case, but what you're going to notice is that it is a driver offset. The shift levers are over to the left rather than to the right, unlike a normal Jeep, and that's going to be a problem for us because that is all specialized. Hopefully the case is savable on there, and then maybe we can find some new internals for it. Not sure what the game plan is yet, but since it's a driver offset, that means that the axles are also a driver offset. So you'll see right there, the differentials towards this side rather than any other Willys Jeep in the world, it's on that side. So The problem with something like this is that you can't just slap in civilian Jeep parts that are readily available, because nothing will interchange with this. Even if you look at the hubs, these are all just totally custom, you know, to this Jeep. Really neat looking, I might add. But the rear was a full floating axle, which is pretty cool. You'll notice that the wheels are a solid one piece. These, of course, have some pretty bent up lips on them, but if they were in good shape, they'd be super valuable. So that solid one piece wheels, that one looks to be original. Same thing with that one. That one kind of looks like a civilian wheel. That one is also one piece. So it's got some good original parts on it. On the back end, you can see the Ford logo right here, very prominent on the Jeep. And then it's got the original bumperettes on it, which are super cool. What I was surprised is, obviously the thing's sitting on its wheels, but just how short the body is. This tub seems to be a couple inches shorter than a standard Jeep. Maybe they raised them up just for safety. If there weren't people falling out of them, I don't know. But to me, the opening of this always seems super big and a little uncomfortable if you're sitting in there driving the thing. Let's take a look at what the fire actually did to this poor thing. If you look underneath the engine, the Bluetooth oil pan here, you'll notice some melted aluminum sitting down in the bottom of it. That would be the pistons of the engine. Not good at all. And the frame is obviously just toasted on it. I mean, disconnected all over the place. The knuckles of the axles are also toasted, beyond pitted. I mean, you can never even get the bolts off of that. Frame is just beat up and destroyed back here. But I gotta say, the machine gun mount held up perfectly. That's a sturdy piece right there. This one doesn't have it anymore, but kind of weird setup where they had, this is obviously the windshield latch, but the hood latch for this actually came up through a hole on the fender. So I'm not sure how well that would have worked if you smashed your fender on something and bent it up. I don't know if the hood latch would work on there anymore, but something very unique to the GP. Now the dash is all wrecked and destroyed, but in the center of it's this huge square, and they actually used a Ford pickup truck gauge cluster in these, which you can still find them on eBay, so it'd be kind of neat to pop one of those back in there, because there's a lot of good parts on this thing still. Saving the entire Jeep might be very difficult, and it's really expensive, because like I said, it's got a Ford tractor engine, which we could get a tractor engine put in here. The unknown is the condition of the transmission and transfer case, because those are specialized to the Jeep. Obviously, with enough money, you can fix anything in the world, but if it takes, you know, $20,000 to make this thing run and drive while still looking like this, it just would not be a very good idea. And I think it would be sacrilegious to put this body on a CJ2A chassis, because that's just taking the very easy way out. I think if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. Try fixing up the frame rails on it, figuring out suspension, and the leaf springs are totally destroyed on it. I think what happened is the heat got to the springs, and that's why they're warped upside down. Both the front springs are like that. It's just, she is rough. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I knew it was going to be rough when I was going to get it, but I didn't think it'd be this rough. However, this thing is still extremely valuable. Even as this Jeep currently sits, it's worth more than a rough condition CJ2A that runs and drives, for sure. I mean, even just the grill alone, I'm sure you could bend it up and use it on another Jeep, but as wall art, these are super valuable. There's a lot of really unique pieces on this, like the hangers for the leaf springs, and of course, if you could straighten out the wheels, there would be that. Only non-GP parts I see on this thing, aside from a wheel, is it's got civilian Jeep seat frames in it, probably from CJ2A, and then somebody made their own bracketry on here. Thanks for watching the video. This is just a little bit of a walk around showing the condition of the Jeep. I have no idea what my plans are with it. I really need to go through the mechanical side to see if it's even worth salvaging, but we will figure that out in the next video.